The single most franchise-altering transaction in Detroit Lions history might be about to come full circle in a way that nobody anticipated, and the conversations happening right now could redefine what we thought was possible for this roster heading into championship contention. Welcome to Lions News Fan Report, your exclusive and trusted source for every critical development, every strategic insight, and every piece of insider analysis about our Detroit Lions. I'm bringing you the unfiltered truth about what's developing within this organization, combining insider perspective with the objective evaluation that decisions of this magnitude demand. Today, I'm walking you through a scenario that's been quietly building momentum, something that connects directly to the foundation of everything this current Lions team has become, and involves the quarterback who spent 12 seasons giving everything he had to this franchise before circumstances forced a different path. January 30th, 2021 stands as one of the most significant dates in modern Lions history. The day we traded Matthew Stafford to the Los Angeles Rams in exchange for Jared Goff, multiple first-round picks, and the draft capital that would literally construct the core of our current championship-caliber roster. That transaction seemed straightforward at the time, two franchise quarterbacks switching teams with Detroit getting crucial picks in return. But what Brad Holmes and this front office did with those assets transformed that single trade into something far more impactful than anyone imagined. Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, the foundational pieces that have made us legitimate Super Bowl contenders, all trace their lineage back to that Stafford deal. Fast forward to today, and we're watching something remarkable unfold. The Lions are genuine championship contenders with a roster built through brilliant draft strategy and player development. Jared Goff has evolved into one of the NFL's elite quarterbacks, throwing for at least 29 touchdowns in each of his last 3 seasons and finishing 5th in MVP voting in 2024. Jahmyr Gibbs is putting together a historic season, currently tied with Barry Sanders for most touchdowns in NFL history before turning 24. Jameson Williams signed an $83 million extension after proving he's a legitimate number 1 receiver. This team that Stafford's trade helped build is everything Lions fans dreamed about for decades. But here's where the narrative takes an unexpected turn that requires us to examine possibilities that seemed impossible just months ago. Matthew Stafford is now 37 years old, playing for a Rams team that's struggling to recapture their championship form from a few years back. His contract situation with Los Angeles creates flexibility that didn't exist previously, and there are legitimate questions about whether the Rams are positioned to compete at the level Stafford wants during the final years of his career. Meanwhile, the Lions have constructed exactly the type of complete roster that Stafford never had during his 12 years in Detroit. A dominant offensive line, elite skill position players, a defense that can create turnovers and control games, and coaching that maximizes every player's potential. The possibility that's being explored in league circles, and this is where things get genuinely fascinating, is whether there's a scenario where Matthew Stafford could return to Detroit for one final championship run with the franchise where he gave his prime years. Now, before anyone dismisses this as pure fantasy or unrealistic speculation, let me walk you through why this actually makes more sense than you might initially think. Stafford already won his Super Bowl with the Rams. He's got the ring that eluded him throughout his Lions career. But there's something profoundly meaningful about the idea of returning to Detroit, the city that supported him through all those difficult years, and winning a championship for the fans who stood by him when playoff appearances felt like distant dreams. From a football perspective, the fit would be absolutely remarkable. Stafford would be stepping into an offense featuring Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, and Sam Laporta when healthy. That's the type of weapons collection he never had access to during his original Detroit tenure. The offensive line that's protecting Jared Goff so effectively would give Stafford the clean pockets he's thrived in throughout his career. Ben Johnson's offensive scheme, which has made Goff look like an MVP candidate, would be perfectly suited to Stafford's arm talent and deep ball accuracy. And most importantly, Stafford would be joining a team that's already proven it can win at the highest level, not trying to carry an entire franchise on his shoulders like he did for so many years. The emotional component of this potential move cannot be overstated. Stafford left Detroit under circumstances that, while necessary for both parties, carried genuine sadness for everyone involved. He wanted to compete for championships. The Lions needed to rebuild, and the trade benefited both organizations tremendously. But there were real feelings there, a connection between Stafford and Detroit that 12 years of partnership creates. His comments over the years have made clear that he still has deep affection for this city and this fan base. The opportunity to return and finish his career where it started, this time with a legitimate championship roster around him, would be a storybook ending that resonates far beyond just football strategy. Now, let's address the practical realities that would need to align for this to actually happen. The Lions would need to evaluate whether Stafford at 37 represents an upgrade over Goff in terms of championship probability. Goff has been phenomenal, absolutely, but Stafford brings playoff experience, championship pedigree, and an arm talent that might provide advantages in specific matchup scenarios. The Rams would need to be willing to part with Stafford, which depends on their evaluation of their own championship timeline and whether they believe a rebuild makes more sense than continuing to compete with an aging quarterback. And Stafford himself would need to be emotionally and professionally invested in the idea of returning to Detroit, accepting that he'd be coming back not as the savior, but as a final piece to a championship puzzle already largely assembled. The financial aspects would require creative maneuvering, but nothing impossible for a front office that's demonstrated exceptional roster management. Stafford's current contract with the Rams includes flexibility that would allow a trade without crippling cap implications. The Lions would need to restructure some deals and make strategic decisions about the quarterback position moving forward, but championship windows require bold moves and financial creativity. If the front office believes Stafford gives them the best chance to win a Super Bowl in 2026, they'll find ways to make the money work without compromising the roster's overall strength. Here's what makes this scenario particularly compelling from a legacy perspective. Stafford would be returning to play alongside talent that his original trade helped acquire. Jameson Williams exists on this roster because of the draft capital from the Stafford deal. Jahmyr Gibbs is here because of picks that trace back to that transaction. The irony of Stafford potentially winning a Super Bowl in Detroit with players his own trade helped bring to the franchise would be one of the most poetic storylines in NFL history. It would validate both the trade and the rebuild, proving that difficult decisions made with long-term vision can create outcomes nobody anticipated. The timing of such a move would be critical. The Lions' championship window is open right now with this roster construction and this coaching staff. Goff is playing great football, but if the front office believes Stafford's experience and arm talent provide even marginal advantages in critical playoff moments, that calculation changes how you evaluate the move. Stafford has proven he can win the biggest games, has shown he can perform under maximum pressure, and brings intangibles that only come from years of experience. For a team that's this close to championship glory, those intangibles matter enormously. I want to be clear that I'm not suggesting the Lions should move on from Goff out of disrespect or lack of appreciation for what he's accomplished here. Goff has been phenomenal, has exceeded every expectation, and has earned tremendous respect from this fan base. But championship decisions sometimes require evaluating whether good can become great, whether the final piece exists that transforms a contender into a champion. If Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell believe Stafford represents that piece, that final addition that maximizes this roster's championship probability, then it's a conversation worth having regardless of how uncomfortable it might feel. The fan reaction to a Stafford return would be overwhelmingly positive. I have no doubt about that. Lions fans never stopped loving Matthew Stafford, never blamed him for wanting to compete for championships, and have celebrated his success in Los Angeles. The opportunity to welcome him back, to have him finish his career in Honolulu Blue, to potentially win a Super Bowl together, would create an emotional connection that transcends normal player-team relationships. This would be about family returning home, about unfinished business getting completed, about a love story between quarterback and city, getting the ending it deserves. Now, I need to hear directly from you because this conversation requires honest input from the Lions faithful. Drop a comment below and tell me straight up, would you want to see Matthew Stafford return to Detroit? Do you believe he gives us a better chance to win a Super Bowl than continuing with Jared Goff? How would you feel about the front office making such a bold move when we're already this close to championship contention? And what would it mean to you emotionally to see Stafford in a Lions uniform again, this time with a roster capable of winning it all? Let's have this discussion together in the comments. To wrap everything up, here's my final analysis on the Matthew Stafford return scenario. While speculative, the possibility of Stafford coming back to Detroit makes more practical and emotional sense than many would initially assume. The Lions have constructed the championship roster Stafford never had during his original tenure, built largely through the draft capital his trade provided. At 37, Stafford still possesses the arm talent and championship experience that could provide advantages in critical playoff moments. The emotional resonance of him returning to win a Super Bowl for the city and fans who supported him through difficult years would create one of the NFL's great legacy stories. If Brad Holmes believes this move maximizes our championship probability, it's worth serious consideration. Subscribe to Lions News Fan Report right now for comprehensive daily coverage of every roster development, every strategic decision, and every piece of insider analysis about our Detroit Lions. Hit that subscribe button, activate notifications, and join our community of passionate Lions fans demanding elite journalism. Share this video with every Lions fan who needs to understand what might be developing. Engage in the comments with your honest thoughts about a potential Stafford return. And check back tomorrow for more exclusive Lions news and analysis. This is where championship-level coverage meets passionate fandom. 1. Pride.